Right. So what we discussed in the previous session about enterprise analysis. Now we are calling it as strategy analysis even, because earlier it was confined only to an enterprise. I mean, organization. That's kind of skill set is required. So for that, we need to assess the capability gaps. Before that, understand defining the business need, assessing the capability gap, solution approach, followed by how to define the business case and how to work on the business case. That's what something which we have learned. And now, as far as the role of a business analyst itself is concerned, apart from understanding our enterprises, it's also understand to implement the strategy or to understand the strategy. Because in the beginning of the session which I have explained you, right? So I told you about the importance of strategy for any organization, because strategy is one kind of business analysis way of performing a business, right? So building the strategy, implementing the strategy is something essentially required for any organization. So when being a business analyst, we are working on applications. It's not only about understanding the enterprise, but it's also important for us to understand about strategy. So whatever the work you have done so far are more or less the same. In this strategy analysis, we need to analyze the current state of it, because what were the existing state? Because if you remember, I have given you an assignment, right? So to make you to understand about the traditional point of sale system, if you remember. This is where generally we call it as analyzing the current state stands for. So for this, you need to have an idea over the business need that is required. At the same time, we need to get the results of illustration, because JAT session, based on the JAT session, by conducting some illustration technique called JAT session and all, we'll be knowing about. So how to move further. So what expectations customer has and how and what is that are we going to implement. At the same time, even business requirements, at the same time, how to engage customers. These are all the inputs we need to take to perform the task. Wherein to analyze the current state is required, because if you want to define the future state or the target state, means I'm talking about cloud-based point of sale system. First thing is that we need to analyze the current state, means what was the existing current state which customer want us to perform, right? So this is what something which we need to do. Analyzing the current state is the first one. So once we have analyzed the current state, we need to define the future state as well. Means what is that we are about to develop. This is where it comes under the future state. So state of transition between current to future or a target state is what we call it as gap analysis. This is where gap analysis come into picture. Unless we have not identified the gap, potential gap I'm talking about, unless until if you have not identified the potential gap between as is and to be, so then the project won't be considered as complete. So understanding the basic difference between current to target state is what something which we have to be performed. Next, in continuation to that, we must assess the risk. What is the possible risk which is involved, right? So what are the different risks which is involved in defining the future state? Because future state was already given in the case study to you, because it was already given. Because earlier, normally when we work as BA, solution we need to come up with. Solution may be one or multiple. But here the solution was already defined. Solution was already given, right? So cloud-based point of sale system is the solution we have taken already.